All right. Good evening, everybody. Just checking in. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up. Just let me know if the sound's all right. All right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it. We'll go ahead and get started here. We can all join palms as we begin. And you can repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right, and putting the palms down. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Good to sit with you all tonight. I always like to start with a question just to give time for people to settle in before we begin the meditation practice. So the question I have for you tonight is, how are you with the practice of patience? It's a pretty general question. I talk about patience a lot, but can never really explore it too much. So without giving too much framework to it, just a general question of how are you dealing with patience? For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. There's a chat box on your screen there somewhere, most likely, and feel free to type in your response, which can be as brief or lengthy as you'd like. I'll go ahead and type it in here. How are you at dealing with patience? Pretty simple question. You can just kind of expand on when you hear that right now. What resonates with you? Patience is really something we're challenged with every day. Sometimes it's around being patient with yourself. Sometimes it's around being patient with family members. Sometimes it's around being patient with work or strangers or social media. There's all kinds of things that require patience. And, they'll hit people differently. Some days are better than others, really. But just kind of a question to get us all started. I think for me, the practice of patience has been incredibly important, specifically with when you really look at integrating Buddhist teachings into your life and this practice of non-self and the Bodhisattva practice. It requires a tremendous amount of patience because, for the most part, other than your basic necessities, the practice is really to just put yourself to the side, and that's a very difficult practice. and it requires a lot of patience. Patience as you continue on the journey and on the path. It requires tremendous amount of patience with others. You know, um, I was talking with someone earlier today, and without getting too far into it, um, this is a comment that's usually better in person because I get to see laughter. But people often think that running a Buddhist temple maybe is like this simple, fun, easy thing to do. You need to realize that when the temple is open, we see 600 to 800 people a week through that place. So, it's a few thousand people every month. Obviously, a lot of them are the same people, but that's a lot of people coming through the doors. And if you look at the basic teachings of the Buddha, which says we suffer because of greed, anger, ignorance, and then we open up doors to people who are interested in learning about Buddhism and meditation and spend time exploring their own levels of greed, anger, ignorance. What we've just done is we've opened up the doors to 600 to 800 people a week that are greedy, angry, and ignorant. And that's a lot to deal with. So, running a Buddhist temple it's not like you're just sitting back and meditating all day long. And I didn't bring this up to talk about my practice, but that's where I ended up. I mean, that's a big part of it is dealing with a tremendous amount of people who are in very often pretty miserable places. Whether it's, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, they're seeking. And when you open your doors to a place like that, you're bringing together a lot of people. And so it takes a tremendous amount of patience, not just from, my lens, but everybody in the Sangha, everybody in the community, be patient with each other. It's, community in Sangha is difficult. I remember there was a nun when I was at the monastery in Taiwan. This was 2005. And I don't remember the question that was asked to her, but somebody asked a question and she responded. It was something about, daily life as a nun. And her response, I remember the essence of the question was around thinking that like being a nun was like this simple, peaceful, easy thing. And so the nun's response was to this person, do you have any sisters? And the person who asked the question was female. And she said, yes, I have two. And the nun responded, well, what's it like, being a girl and living with two sisters? And she said, oh, you have no idea. It's so difficult. And she went on and on and on about how difficult it was being a girl with two sisters. And the nun just kind of let her finish and then started laughing and said, I also am a girl and I live with 250 sisters. So it was a really beautiful response to remind us all that we are practiced or challenged with the practice of patience everywhere. And that even monks and nuns in their devotion to a Buddhist path are also surrounded with brothers and sisters, Buddhist monks and nuns, and they too are challenged with daily life. So keep that in mind that everything requires a bit of patience. So I always remember her answer and just a reminder that if we see everybody as our brothers and sisters, then we can hopefully have a greater level of patience for them. All right, so let's see, a couple responses. Bill, overall not great. I'm getting better. Brian and Linda, some days good, some days not so great. Yep. Okay until multiple things don't go my way. And Samir, sharing how I feel has helped my patience immensely. I'm done holding it in and hiding from myself, making strides. Yeah, great. All good responses. With these questions and responses, there's no right answers or good or bad answers. There's just part of this practice is just waking up to the truth of where you're at on this journey. And if you lack patience and you're terrible at patience, it's important to be aware of that and to express that. I think that's really the first step. So, all right, with that, we're going to get started with the meditation practice. So a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You won't figure anything out whatsoever. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't expect anything from this practice. Don't ask yourself if you're doing it right or wrong. We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. Sounds, you'll hear them. This is life. And the practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. It helps if you're on a cushion, slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, and the mind learning to settle Know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how you sit and hold the hands across the legs. Not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddhist Awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. Practice of meditation is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. For most of us, the way you respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice, not necessarily fun, but meditation is free. Buddhist practice, free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. And it is a practice that requires a tremendous amount of patience. What I see very often is people at this practice for a little while and then they disappear, and then they come back and then they disappear. And that's part of the whole journey. Is my master used to say, once you get exposed to the teachings and you start on this path, you never leave it. Meaning that even if for a while you think you're not doing your meditation, or you're not going to a temple, or you're not reading or whatever, that you're still on the path. It's something that's always there. Once your mind, your consciousness is exposed to Buddhist teachings, you can't ever leave the path. And I find that a very important reminder for people, especially if you're newer to it and you struggle with patience a bit towards your practice when it comes to self-judgment, doubt, things like that. Don't doubt yourself. Don't judge your practice. Don't try not to think, well, I've been at this for X amount of time, so I should be here, I should be there. It's a journey. And you'll have days where you're better at being kind and gentle and a decent human being. Some of those days will be better than others. So with that, I'll pause. I just want to, as always, turn it over to you all for questions. Again, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If you have any questions, there's a chat box there. Give me 1 second. Feel free to type in your questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, and I'll respond. I'll be right back. And I'm back. So again, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. We'll use the rest of the time. I always prefer to just respond to your questions as opposed to rambling on my own. So feel free to share whatever you wish. Questions, thoughts, challenges, difficulties, anything you're sitting with. I'll be patient. Question, Bhavani, why does the mind manipulate the lengths of the breath? So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I don't know, maybe you can expand on that or clarify when you say the mind manipulating the lengths of breath. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to respond to that. I can share a few thoughts on the breath with regards to meditation practice or not. While hopefully you'll share a little more with what you mean by the question, just so I can clarify, um, or so you can clarify for me. But my guidance and suggestion always with the breath, and this is when you look at the Anapanasati Sutta, when the Buddha was teaching about meditation, he said, when you're breathing in and taking a short breath, just know you're taking a short breath. If you're breathing out and taking a long breath, just know you're taking a long breath. Um, Meaning, try not to manipulate the breath at all, but simply become aware of the breath. So often people ask, long breath, short breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, hold the breath, breathe through the ear, out through the nose, just breathe. That's my understanding of the teachings, is to simply become aware of the breath while practicing anapanasati. Yeah, so that's what I'm referencing, is that teaching that the Buddha said it's an awareness of the breath, not to try to manipulate it. I think that if we pull ourselves out of the meditation practice for a minute and we look at, for me, one of the many reasons we would meditate is to become aware of how we tend to respond in our day-to-day lives. Meaning that if you're trying to control or manipulate the length of your breath, you're probably also trying to control and manipulate every other thing in your life, right? I mean, it's something you're just sitting and breathing. That's it. And even in that moment of just sitting and breathing, you may find yourself trying to manipulate the breath, trying to change your breath, trying to control the breath, when it just happens naturally on its own. The breath is just there. We don't have to force it. We don't have to control it. We don't have to manipulate it. We just have to observe it, is the practice. So if you find yourself trying to manipulate the breath, then you're also probably trying to manipulate so many other things in your life. But that, in essence, is the practice, is to go beyond the manipulation of the breath or trying to control the breath and just abide in awareness and sensation of breath. So hopefully that answers your question, Avani. Joe, how to encourage someone who may be unfamiliar with the teachings, currently facing the end of their life? My dad. Yeah, that's a tough one, Joe. And, I'm sorry about your dad. It's, what I say in general, regardless of the situation, and then I may speak specifically to your situation, but my general expression is, or response to that is, it's really hard to get others into the practice, because there was a time in our lives where, this has been my life every moment for the last 18 years. But if you came up to me 25 years ago and said, "Hey, Jeff, you should try this Buddhist stuff," I would, been really annoyed and irritated and probably punched you. So there's a time in our lives where we are ready to embrace looking at ourselves honestly. There's a time in our lives where we're ready to cultivate a meditation practice and working on kindness and compassion and things like that. And that time is different for everybody, and that time cannot be forced onto somebody else. There's a great expression that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, meaning that each person has to arrive at their place of practice on their own when they're ready. So there's that response. Then specifically, Joe, when it comes to your situation with your dad, facing the end of his life, I don't know specifics, so I don't know if that's any day now, if we're talking 6 months, I don't know specifically. But what I can tell you is, really the best way to share, I find, this practice with somebody is to share with them what it's done for you in your life. And if it's made you a calmer, kinder, gentler, more compassionate, loving human being, then you can express that. And very often you can share the teachings without actually sharing the teachings at all. And that can really be done, as I was saying, by expressing what you've learned from this practice. So again, there's so many variables here, but it depends on how open they are, how willing they are. But if someone is really closed off to learning about Buddhism or meditation, then there really is no way. But if they're closed off to it and they love and care about you, then there's probably an interest in you and what you're doing, hopefully, or how your life has changed. You can very opaquely, very skillfully talk about Buddhism without even talking about Buddhism. You look at the paramitas of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. You could simply have a conversation with him about how generosity, morality, patience, etc. have been really important to your life recently. And maybe that will encourage him to talk about what generosity and morality and patience are in his life, without having to make it about Buddhism or meditation or religion or spirituality, because a lot of people just have no interest in that, or maybe no interest in your specific interest of it. So I'll never forget that there was a story from my first master Xing, when I was in Taiwan. His story he would tell when he was a child, and he became a monk when he was 12, a novice monk, and so he was gone very young and came back maybe later in his teens or 20s, and his grandmother was there. And he tells a story that his grandmother was talking about this rumbling in her stomach, and that was her chi, that was her life force, that was her energy. And here was this young man who'd been a monk for 8 or 10 years, and all of a sudden thought he knew what was smartest and wisest and best. And so his grandmother that kept talking about her chi, he kept saying, no, there's none of that. I didn't learn anything about that. That's not real. And in his attempt to do what, to be this great Buddhist monk that he thought he was trying to be, he actually shattered his grandmother's belief in something. And there's really nothing Buddhist about that. So it's not about changing someone else's beliefs or getting them to believe yours. It's about listening to them and understanding them. And so he shares that at that stage of, his cultivation of his practice, he really was misguided and didn't understand that he probably should have just listened to his grandmother and not shattered what she believed. So I think it's an important story to really reflect on, especially with older generations and older generations that may have no exposure or interest in Buddhism. I see Marisa here. I'd like to share something like, I believe in blank, and I hope that it may bring you a similar comfort that it brings me. Yeah, and it's a beautiful way, Marisa, to kind of express that. Again, making it about you and what's important to you. And that may pique the interest of him. Joe, all of that resonates. He's seen a change in me, and that is encouraging for him for sure. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome, Joe. And it's, obviously we all send you love and support for you and your father. And man, these are tough times that we're in. And I can fully understand that when we find Buddhist practice and it makes our lives so much more peaceful and happy, that we want to share that. We just have to remind ourselves that to the person who doesn't know anything about meditation or Buddhism, if you go to a restaurant and you have really wonderful food and you tell someone to go try the restaurant, they're probably not going to think you're weird. They might go and not like the food, or they might not go at all, but they're not going to think you're weird for telling them about a good restaurant. If you see a movie you love and you start posting it and sharing it and telling everyone to go check out this movie, they may or may not see it, they may or may not like it, but they're not going to think you're strange because you shared a movie. Now, for many people of an older generation or don't know anything about Buddhism, as soon as you say, I'm interested in Buddhism, they may just think you're weird. Now, we all know that that's ridiculous, but they don't know that. So keep that in mind as well. Someone asked, I think a week or two ago, that, Buddhism is not, we're not on the street corner like holding up signs that say, come join us. But I can fully appreciate, Joe, that when we know and love people and we see them suffering and we want them to benefit from this as we have, because that's really, my guess is the intention behind your question, is that it's changed your life. You love your dad, you're seeing him at this time, and you want to share something beautiful with him in an effort to help him deal with his days. And so my guess is that's what this is really about. And so I think, like Marisa said, or maybe some of the things I've shared, maybe can help you share the teachings with him, potentially without sharing the teachings at all. So, good question. Other thoughts or questions? Samir, just a thought. I feel like working on curbing intergenerational suffering is the greatest gift a child can give a parent, and a parent to child, freeing ourselves from the chains of time. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm 46, and so parents being 77, and the way that they were raised and the things they saw and the things that they were exposed to and the things that just seemed okay and right in that generation is really so different. And anytime we can close the gap on that a little bit and, call people out on certain things, I think it's very beneficial. So anything we can do, there's a balance here, because if you want to actually be heard and listened to, you have to do it in a hopefully a wise, compassionate way that is not offensive. Otherwise, the lesson and the teaching gets completely lost. So definitely, there's things that we are, or even just Samir who brought that up. There's views of the world that you have right now that you may think are correct and proper compared to, a parent or a grandparent in your family, based on various circumstances. And so you want to teach those things to your child. Now, fast forward 30, 40 years from now, and your child's going to be thinking, oh, Dad, you're so clueless. So it is. It's just a cycle. He'll be here, he'll be educating you on things, on your own ignorance. So you'll get to practice it endlessly. Other thoughts, comments, questions, or anything? I'll do one more before we wrap up here. Anything else before we close? All right, so I'll go ahead and close on that. I think that's enough for this evening to think about. So we can all join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Joe's father during his time of suffering, and to Joe and the family that suffers as well. May you all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So thank you all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up 14 years ago to bring Buddhist practice to those who show up. So thanks for showing up. Every night we have different classes, different Buddhist traditions. We shut the doors March 2020, so about 14 months. Everything is virtual, whether it's on Zoom or YouTube. The recovery classes, the family classes, study groups, making beanies for those living on the streets. So there's always something going on. Just go to the website. Buddha for You is also closed for 14 months. As most of you know, we do have the website now. So if you need anything, you can go online to Buddha for You. I'm happy to help you there as well. The question always is, when are we going to reopen, or what's the plans to reopen? We will reopen at some point. There are no plans yet, but I do like the fact that we're getting closer. And it does feel like, it won't be hopefully too much longer. But as I say a few times a day to the people who ask, we've been closed 14 months. We can wait a couple more. So let's continue to be safe. As people become vaccinated and as the numbers drop, there tends to be this kind of, personally, I think, this very false sense of security. And I'm not one who likes to live in fear. I like to live in the reality that there's still a very dangerous virus, and we're still very much in a pandemic, and people are still dying every single day. So please get vaccinated, do what you can to keep others safe, and let's not forget the reality. And last thing I'll say about patience is, someone said to me today, I'm just tired of staying home. I'm ready to go out. And let's please not allow lack of patience to put ourselves in situations that can bring harm to self or others. So please continue to be patient and be safe. I wish you all well. And again, Joe, you got a whole group of people here that if you need anything, you know where to find us. So sending you lots of love.